Hey guys, here I am with another episode of Things That Tend to Mess Us Up. And this is a series where I go through various items and technologies that are common in our lives, but because of the way in which we have to interact with them, or just the nature of them in what they tend to do for us, can have a potential negative impact on our comfort, on our mobility, and even just our overall bodily tone. And what I'm going to advise are ways in which you can either minimize or avoid those negative impacts by either eliminating interacting with these things or just sort of minimizing the amount of time that you spend with it. And what I'm going to go through in this one is what you're actually viewing this video on, and that would be screens. All right, so what's the big deal with screens? And in particular, what's the big deal with screen time and how much time we spend interacting with screens? Well, to understand that, we've got to take a look at how we're designed as a species and specifically how our brains seem to be organized as a species. Now, we've got 5 senses, and we actually have more than that. We have 5 extra senses. These are the ways in which that we can perceive the world outside of us. We've got vision, we've got smell, we've got taste, we've got hearing, and we have tactile touch. This is how we perceive what is going on outside of our bodies. And that said, even though we have 5 extra senses, we have one in particular that we tend to favor, one that is very dominant in us, and that is our vision. We have the most parts of our brain dedicated to vision, both perceiving it and interpreting it as it relates to language, as it relates to expectations and memory, and understanding what's going on in the outside world. We heavily favor visual stimulus and visual interpretation as a species. Comparing it to another species, say a dog, dogs tend to be dominant in terms of smell. And a great example would be when a human being enters a room. Let's say a human enters a classroom. They would look at the classroom and they would see, there's about maybe 24 tables, and we got a blackboard, and it smells like the trash hasn't been taken out in the last couple of days. Well, when the dog enters the room, the dog is going to think, it smells like an old cheeseburger, and it looks like somebody had maybe like French fries for lunch, and it's a little tabley in here. So that's the difference between a human being and a dog. And a human being, we rely on vision. So what does that have to do with screens? Well, man, do they suck us in. Because our brains are constantly looking and trying to interpret visual stimulus more so than any other stimulus that is external to our body. And so, when you get like a brand new phone and that glow, it is amazing. It's kind of like a tractor beam. It'll really kind of suck us in. And especially if we're interested in what we're engaging in, then we can lose very quickly and easily awareness of the world outside of that screen. So what a screen can do to us is give us functional tunnel vision, where we do not perceive our bodies as well as we're engaging with that really narrow, myopic focus. We lose what's called peripheral awareness. And that is being able to perceive and appreciate what's going on in the periphery of your vision. What a screen will do for many of us with a certain level of intensive focused use, which there's no actual standard time. It's an ish that all of us kind of know when we cross that threshold. That once you cross that threshold, you lose awareness of the world around you, and you get very hyper-focused on the immediate in front of you. Now, this can then affect you outside of your time spent in front of screens, in the sense that the brain learns to prioritize immediate stimulus in front of us as opposed to soaking up information from our periphery. And what happens then is that loss of body awareness, that reduction of knowing where your body is in space relative to those eyeballs, well, that just tends to stick around after a certain level of intensive screen time, and certainly when it's happening very regularly in our lives. And let's face it, it's happening more and more, and the majority of us will have jobs that are in front of a terminal, in front of a screen, whether it is a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, or even a smartphone. We're interacting more and more on these screens. You're watching this right now on a screen. Maybe it's your phone, maybe it's a desktop, laptop, or a tablet. Doesn't matter. You're in front of that thing watching this video right now. And so what we've got to be aware of is the effect that time in front of a focused visual stimulus and that asks us to ignore what's happening around that screen, that has a big impact on us potentially in the immediate after that screen use. And if it's happening very regularly, it's adding up. And then what a person will tend to experience is they tend to get tighter, most in particular through their neck, through their torso, and they're not able to move as freely and as fluidly through a space in the immediate after interacting heavily and intensively with screens. I don't know what you're talking about with that tight neck, tight torso thing. I feel fine. All right, so screen time can tend to give us a little bit of tunnel vision or a lot of tunnel vision, and it can tend to make us a little myopic and a little tight around these pair of peepers that are just locked into what we're focusing on. So what to do about it? Well, the simplest solution is to be aware of the effect that screen time can have and to break it up. And the easiest way to break it up is to lift your gaze from the screen that you're looking at periodically, regularly throughout your day, and to look out into an open view. This can be as simple as lifting your gaze, and if you're in a big open room, just observe the room in your periphery. Just soak up what's going on in the corners of your vision. This works great if you actually have an ability to look out into a very large space. And all of us know how at ease we tend to get when we look at wide open spaces, when we experience them. It's very human to interact and exist in wide open spaces. It's very weird, this modern world that we've created that's kind of closed in, a little claustrophobic. So you'll enjoy the feeling that you get from taking time to do that. And so you'll get some pretty immediate feedback and a pretty immediate reward from doing that. So just gazing up and away out, looking out into a wide open space and seeing the world as a whole and in the corners of your eyes, that has an enormous impact. And with that, that's not going to be enough. You actually got to go out and take a walk. Yeah, that's right. You actually got to go for a walk. Now, why am I saying that you got to go for a walk in order to reduce the effects of screen time? Well, you got to experience the world going past you. When you're on a screen, all you experience is the world right in front of you. And that tends to change the expectation of our brains as to what's important and what we expect to be happening out of the corners of our eyes. And it is so important for us to experience what's known as visual flow, and it's also known as optic flow in the literature. And this seems to be very important for our overall health and well-being, our ability to engage, and our ability to relax. And it is simple as you going for a walk and experiencing, sensing the world passing you by as you are moving through it. Now, this happened all the time prior to screens, and especially prior to the more industrial office setting, modern workplace. So this wasn't anything that we really had to go out of our way to get, perhaps unless you were in an academic situation like 100, 150 years ago, then you had to get out and get away from it and go for a walk. But most of us were experiencing this. And how much of this do we tend to need? Well, at least an hour every day, it seems. So getting outside and going for a walk, experiencing the world going past you, seeing it moving through the corner of your eyes, not looking down when you're walking, looking ahead and at the horizon, seeing cars, houses, the street, trees moving past. That is enormous for all of us to get every day of our lives, and it is very helpful in order to mitigate the effects that the intense and regular use of screens has on all of us, and it doesn't look like it's going to be going away anytime soon for us. All right, guys, so the big takeaway is that screens are by and large here to stay, and we have to learn how to interact with them and use them for the extremely useful tools, the extremely useful technology that it is, but not let it get to a point where it has a greater ill effect on us than it already tends to have. And so the best thing that you can do is to enjoy and take time to experience wide open visual stimulus, see the world to the side of you, soak up your periphery, lift your gaze from your phones very regularly, and most importantly, go for a walk and see the world moving past you. Experience that. It doesn't matter if it's as short as a half a mile walk. Get that in as much as you can, and you're going to feel much better around all the time that all of us will need to have in front of a screen, for better or for worse.